already and the online videos with it have struck such a chord? What's the zeitgeist?
Because I'm firmly on the side of my viewers and readers, and I'm doing everything I can to help them understand how to live responsible and meaningful lives, and that there's a conjunction between those two issues of responsibility and meaning that hasn't been addressed properly in our culture for a long time.
And when you say your viewers and readers, are you thinking here of a specific group of people? Are these targeted on a particular group?
No, I wouldn't say so. I have more male viewers online, but on YouTube, the standard viewer is male, so it isn't obvious that that's a consequence of my philosophy, let's say, more than an artifact of the technology. I think that male activity is viewed with far more skepticism than is warranted at the moment, and that's certainly a problem, and that's part of the viewpoint that assumes that what our culture is best construed as oppressive patriarchy of some sort, and that any activity within that is to be regarded as a manifestation of that proclivity towards tyranny, which is an absolutely appalling viewpoint in my estimation. And I make that, what would you call it, opinion quite clear. But for me, most of this is a matter of psychological endeavor, not political endeavor.
We might come back on the proclivity towards tyranny later on and how that relates to how you see this argument. But just on your interest in young men, particularly in the young male in Western societies, you often talk beyond that, but mainly I think that's your focus. Would it be fair to say that your focus is on how men feel in societies and where you feel they're under attack?
I don't think that is my focus. I think that my focus is the focus that you'd expect from a clinical psychologist and an educator, which is to help individuals, regardless of their group identity, live better lives. I think the fact that what I'm doing is being construed in that manner is a consequence of the absolutely overwhelming influence of identity politics and postmodernism, for that matter, on our political and philosophical discourse. What I'm doing is constantly being viewed as a manifestation of identity politics. And so people talk about my particular attraction for young white men. It's like, sorry, not true. There's virtually no evidence for that. The audiences that come to see me are, and I hate to even categorize them in this manner because it's part of playing the same game, but very diverse ethnically and with regards to gender as well. So the problem is that the way that our discourse is framed right now, it's impossible to avoid being shunted into an identity politics box. And I think that there's nothing about that isn't reprehensible.
I'm really interested at this point in exploring where you're starting from, but you sound quite angry. What do you feel angry about this?
I'm appalled at the role the universities have played in this, to have influenced the culture so that this is the manner in which our discourse is conducted. That the primary issue is which group is what you're saying targeted towards. It's like what I'm saying isn't targeted towards groups. In fact, it's precisely construed as an antidote to the idea that your message should be targeted at groups. I'm interested in the individual, and it also makes sense given my background. First of all, I'm a professor, so I teach individual students. And second of all, and perhaps not in that order, I'm a clinical psychologist, not a sociologist, and not a politician, none of that, concentrating on the development of the individual. And when I go do my talks, I have thousands of people coming to my talks, and I meet thousands of people as a consequence of doing that personally. And none of them talk to me about politics. All of them say the same thing. They've been watching my lectures online, or they've been reading my book. They were in a dark place in their life. They've been trying to adopt personal responsibility and a vision for the future, and to tell the truth to the degree that they can, to take responsibility for their own behavior, and to improve their lives of their families and their communities. And because of doing that, things are much better for them. And that's the story.
I'm interested that you chose a self-help kind of trope here with the book. The rules for life takes us back to Samuel Smiles and Victorian sort of self-help manuals in some senses, in a tradition. But you're someone who doesn't like to be told what to do, and you think a lot of modernity is kind of telling, a bit finger wagging or telling people what to do. So
Right.
why would you accept your
good.
rules? Would
Right,
you
absolutely.
accept Jordan Peterson's rules if you weren't Jordan Peterson?
Oh, good point. Yeah, well, you might also ask, in some sense, how I can get away with that, because, for example, last year I did a series of lectures on the Bible, on Genesis, and it's very easy to make that sort of thing into a finger-wagging morality, but I'm not including myself in the list of people who need improvement. I'm not talking from a pinnacle downwards to my audience. I'm stating a fairly blunt fact, which is that we have plenty of tragedy and malevolence to contend with in the confines of our life, and we need to figure out how to deal with that properly without becoming bitter and cruel and resentful. And these rules are guidelines to help people avoid those pitfalls rather than finger-wagging moral injunctions designed to make them feel guilty. And so that's why the lectures are attractive, because that kind of top-down morality is actually absent from them.
I mean, one view of this large popularity that you're enjoying at the moment, the moment, if you like, the Jordan Peterson moment, is that you've captured a kind of space between what many people think and what they're being told to think. Does that ring a bell with you? And do you think that's a fair description? Is that something you're kind of aiming to do?
Well, I think that people have a sense that the manner in which our public discourse is being conducted has tremendous danger. And the danger is essentially the elevation of the collective over the individual, and that poses a danger both on the left and on the right. And I think that by appealing to the notion of individual sovereignty, which I would say is the primary, it's the meta message behind all of the things that I've been writing about, that people find that to be a great relief, even though what I'm asking them to do is to bear more responsibility for what they do than they might typically be inclined to. And so, but look, I'm facing some of the issues that people confront in their lives very squarely. I believe the fundamental religious truth of the idea that life is suffering. It's suffering because we're mortal and fragile, and because we're also subject to malevolence at our own hands and at the hands of others. It's a constant existential problem, and that can make you bitter and can make you hopeless and nihilistic and depressed and anxious and likely to abuse substances of various sorts as a medication or an escape. It can augur you in a very large number of ways. And I'm suggesting to people that there is a way out of that. And the way out is to confront that forthrightly and to adopt responsibility in your own life and to try to make the world a better place, and that it's necessary to do that. And that if you don't do that, that things go badly. And it's a relief to people to hear that, because they know it. They already know it.
So get a grip on yourself.
Well, it's more find something in your life that's so worthwhile doing that the fact that you're going to suffer is justifiable.
But if that something of value were, for instance, for someone to decide that they are a radical feminist or a radical trans campaigner, that would be something of great value in their lives. But these are not positions that I think you think have been hugely helpful.
It's generally not of great value in their life, because what they're doing is abdicating their personal responsibility to live by their own truth, let's say, to adherence to an ideology. And I'm not a fan of ideologies. I think they're unbelievably dangerous. And I don't really care whether they're on the left or the right. So to be a feminist or a trans activist or to adopt that group-fostered view of the world, I think is generally a mistake. And I don't think it does people any good. Not usually. And it also allows them to adopt, and this is something else that's gone very wrong with our political discourse, is that it allows people to adopt an unearned sense of moral superiority and also of omniscient knowledge, because an ideology offers you that. And there's just nothing in that's helpful.
So what
it
you
just
have
fragments people.
But then what you have isn't an ideology, or
no, it's not an ideology. And
isn't a strong collection of ideas in a sense always an ideology?
No, it's not. It's not. And it's a mistake to think that way, because all that means is that the way that you construe the world is a battleground between different ideologies. And if an ideology is only that which serves a power elite, let's say, which is part of the postmodern neo-Marxist construal, then all it ever is a battle of opinions. And there's nothing underneath that. And it's all power. And that's just not an appropriate way of looking at the world. First of all, there's lots of forces at play that aren't mere power. Competence is one of them, assuming that there are some things that are worthwhile doing. And then with regards to ideology, I wrote a book about that. The first book I wrote is called Maps of Meaning. And it's a description of the relationship between archetypal or mythological thinking, proper religious thinking, I would say, and the parasitical structures that emerge from that, which are basically ideologies. And they can be technically differentiated.